Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017. I'd like to call the Budget Committee meeting to order. First item is committee business. We have two sets of minutes. Everybody had a chance to read those.
The 1:30 to 5 o'clock agenda, under my comments, it mentions Cottage Grove and Roseburg. Roseburg should be stricken from that.
Okay.
That wasn't far enough. Other than that,
Got that? Okay. Any other corrections or changes?
Chair, I move approval of the minutes for May 10 and May 11 as amended.
Okay. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving those two sets of minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, with that correction, we have approved minutes. Any other committee business? Anything for the good of the order before we start? Okay. We will conclude whenever 4 or 5 or whenever we get to that, to have a discussion about protocol and procedure for Thursday night, and we'll do that a little later. Okay. First up is Mike Coles, assessment and taxation. Go ahead.
Mike Coles, Lane County Assessor. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. And I realize that it is kind of a nice day outside and after lunch here, so I'll try to keep everyone amused and wide awake for this afternoon presentation. And I know assessment taxation may not be the most exciting subject, but it's a very important one in that it has the capacity of impacting many other funds and many other departments in Lane County, and not only Lane County, but also all other taxing districts. So starting pretty simple with the mission of assessment taxation. It's going to be a little redundant for many of you, but the mission of assessment taxation is to appraise property, calculate and collect and distribute taxes, to provide related information to the public in a manner that merits the highest degree of confidence in our integrity, efficiency, and fairness. That's really important. That covers a lot in that one paragraph. It covers the assessment of all the property in Lane County. It covers the calculation of tax under Measure 5, 47, and 50. And it also covers it's just the degree of fairness and efficiency of our office, which taxpayers expect. So there can't be any presentation now that we have without this slide. I also put it over here. I know the camera probably can't get it, but it's over here in the corner too. This is one of the pieces of every presentation that I'm going to be giving this year for and probably years after that, as we adjust maybe the 11 cents, but the other 46 cents for the school districts, 32 cents for cities, 7 cents for libraries, parks, water districts, and then 4 cents for fire districts, where just emphasize to taxpayers and the taxing districts and professionals in Lane County what we do in assessment taxation impacts 82 other taxing districts. And of the 82 taxing districts that we impact, the one that funds our work that we do is Lane County, 11 cents. So all the work we do is leveraged off that 11 cents. And it is a lot of work. So just highlights of some of the work that's been done this prior year. We certified nearly $500 million tax roll on October 5th, 2016. We achieved 100% of real market value as required by the state of Oregon, as shown by our annual ratio study. We completed the tax roll with approximately 177,000 tax accounts, with the real market value of $52.8 billion. And a taxable value of $31.5 billion. And those numbers really came into play more this year at Finance and Audit. We're looking at the bond rating increase, where those numbers are actually, they're not isolated just to assessment taxation. They're used for many other indicators for Lane County and for other agencies that do look at our borrowing ability and how we are doing economically in Lane County. So that's one piece I wanted to emphasize a little bit. It's just not for assessment taxation only, but it's for many other entities and measurements. All payments in November were timely processed by November 29th, and we distributed and collected tax in a timely manner for all 83 service districts or taxing districts. Some of the other pieces that we also did this prior year is we added information to our website that allowed taxpayers to pull up sales information using a geographical interface. So a taxpayer can go to our website, pull up all the sales in the past 3 years in, say, Coburg, Cottage Grove, Creswell, City Eugene, and it's just part of kind of an open data initiative where we're every year trying to get more and more data out for taxpayers. So one, it puts less of a burden on the staff to provide that information, but two, taxpayers are expecting that. They expect to have more information out there on the internet and available to them. And the sales tool put together by TS and the JS team and our office is one good example of that initiative of getting more data out to taxpayers. And not only taxpayers, but taxing districts and businesses that use that data. The secondary piece is the officer model. You can't really see it here, but you can kind of see the front of it here. We are officially at a 1-year anniversary for consolidation and remodeling assessment taxation, and that was a big project. Kudos to everyone in the A&T staff and facilities and county administration, all the hard work that went into that remodel, and it's been 1 year. And we are capitalizing on that to look at efficiencies, not only from the standpoint of dollar amount efficiency, but efficiencies within business processes as we combine our staff in one location, where staff that's worked in different levels of one part of the building versus other part of the building, now we're working side by side, and so that inherently brings opportunities that didn't exist in the past. So the divisions are pretty simple in assessment taxation. We have appraisal, and appraisal has 19 FTE. Property tax management has 27 FTE, and administration, just myself and Krista, 2 FTE. So a total of 48 FTE. And so as far as funds, we have one general fund, that's it, and we have a special revenue fund. The special revenue fund is funds we're putting away for eventual replacement of our assessment and taxation computer system. I believe we have close to 225,000, somewhere around there in there. We've been putting funds away for a handful of years now. Estimates are fairly high for a replacement cost of a computer system, but we're still a few years away from actually having to replace the computer system. So we're being proactive in building that reserve fund. Revenue. The majority of our revenue comes from CAFA, which is the County Assessment Function Funding Assistance. I always get that acronym right there. And I have a little, approximately estimated about 16.5%. Essentially, we're re-given or repaid back our part of the recording fees, delinquent interest income, and earnings. At one point in time, it was over 40%. It was originally established, the CAFA grant, back in 1988-89, and Originally, the state had a contribution to that, and that has gone away over the years. So that funding has gone down considerably over the years. However, for our resources, that's 70% of our resource. Other areas of our resources include special assessments, fines, penalties, and fees and charges. Looking at 2017-18 as opposed to the prior year, we're approximately 2% higher in revenue estimation. So we're pretty close to even from prior year, which is pretty good. So requirements by division. Again, we have 3 divisions: administration, appraisal, and property tax management. Administration is about 10%, appraisal 37%, and property tax management 53%. For property tax management, just the general information, what we do in property tax management is payment processing, refunds, clerical errors, cartography, annexations, name change, address changes, tax calculation, public information, deferrals, special assessment, foreclosures, you can go on and on. It's quite a list. And appraisal, above and beyond just the assessment of properties, it's the annual ratio study adjustments, valuation models, Measure 50 exception changes, new construction, public information, also farm forest, enterprise zones, and appeals. And those are just high-level areas that are done in those sections. For 2016-17 in supplemental budget, we did add 2 FTE. We went from 46 FTE in assessment taxation to 48. Those were done partially with the conversion of extra health funds, and in the budget as proposed, those positions are proposed as permanent full-time positions for a total of 48 FTE, breaking those positions out, 1 to property tax and 1 to appraisal. Specifically, an appraisal for reappraisal and property tax for a review and audit of certain areas that haven't been audited for quite a long time. Expenditures, expenses. Expenses are primarily personnel services, no surprise. Materials and services, and then the contingencies again being the software reserve fund. We're very effective and efficient in assessment taxation, looking at our expenses, looking at our prior year's expenses, and the current year's expenses. I believe it was near flat as far as for the adjusted budget prior year to current year. So even with increases in the market in some areas, we held expenses down to level year over year. We're always looking at ways to keep costs stable, and one area in particular this year, with the help of an intern, we're looking at service recapture charges, areas that we potentially have revenue on the table that we haven't tapped, such as funds that, for example, enterprise zone, some of the partition classes, subdivisions, other work that we do that we don't currently have a service recapture charge currently for. So again, in-depth analysis. Part of the in-depth analysis also is staffing, looking at what we want or what we need to be over the next 5 or so years. As you know, we took pretty substantial cuts in 12 and 13, and we are rebuilding back, and those investments in assessment taxation definitely are showing dividends in the work that we do. Also, again, open data initiative, just looking at ways that we can provide additional data to taxpayers at little to no cost to the county, but provide data so that taxpayers can hold us to the highest standard and have that data available to them without interaction or a need from our staff. Again, the consolidation brings opportunities with business process review of all of our business processes. Some areas of concern over the next year or so, our hours are always a concern. We're open from Monday through Thursday, 10 to 3. We have probably, I would say probably every, I don't know, probably every Friday or so, I have someone knocking on my door as far as its administration of assessment taxation is in front of the public service area. So either Krista or myself usually either answers the door. We try to help the staff out as much as possible, or the customers out as much as possible, but we don't have the accounting staff available to accept payments on those Fridays or after hours. But I know the public would like to see hours expanded. Our property inventory, again, even though we're starting reappraisal, we started reappraisal in the Springfield area this year, the inventory is dated, and our goal is to get back on a regular reappraisal cycle. Our exempt properties have, many of them haven't been reviewed, or their files are pretty thin of information about the exemption, and we would like to do an audit of the exempt properties in Lane County, especially assessed properties. It's always a chore to stay on top of those with the requirements for farm and forest properties to make sure that the properties that are in special assessment do indeed qualify for those programs. To train and retain qualified staff, that's been a real challenge with the real estate market being very strong, with the appraisal industry being very where fee appraisers, where we used to see applicants for fee appraisers coming to our office, we don't see those anymore at all. Realtors, we don't see realtors applying for jobs. More see people that are just coming in new to the field or changing careers midstream. Again, our software system, and then again the staffing levels. So as far as Lane County strategic plan, really the biggest thing that we do to support all three areas, or three main areas of the plan, is to provide the infrastructure and funds to the county and the 83 different tax districts to provide the services that are delivered to taxpayers. And we really are proud of the services that we do provide, delivering superior customer service to all Lane County residents. We make sure that the taxing districts have the funds timely, so the taxing districts receive the funds, so we thrive in our schools and our cities. And then we accurately and fairly assess property with the limited resources, using innovative methods and methods that are within our resources. Partnerships, internal partnerships. As we had the consolidation this prior year, a big part of partnerships is making sure that everyone on your department in the different sections are on the same page and working together, and that's one of the important partnerships. We are a strong supporter of Lane Council of Governments and LCOG. We work routinely with common software counties, the counties that I know TS supports, but we also help those counties out as they have questions on business processes, and they do the same for us as they move forward, such as Clackamas County is moving forward with their ProVal, our assessment software, and to the newer version, and we let them go first this time, and so they're working out the bugs, and then we'll go after them for the next major upgrade for that software. District 1, we stay in touch very close with District 1 counties. When we have resources or questions, we work together as far as to solve problems. And again, one piece is Osaka, which is the statewide assessor association. Being the second vice president this year on Osaka, so that means next year I'll be vice president, I'll be president the year after that. So I'll be much more active in that assessor group over the next couple of years. And That's all I have. I know I probably went through fairly quick there, but questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you've seen any preliminary stuff on your reappraisal of Springfield.
Tara, you're probably a good person to answer that.
We started entering some of the data from the inspections. We don't have it all done. This is the time of year that we start data entry. But on the omitted property, the deadline for that is coming up on the 9th, and so we've been processing those. And right now we have 398,000 of R&B that we're going to add on the property. Yeah, they're not all looked yet, so.
I wanted to ask, you had a slide up there on exempt properties, and would that include hospitals? What's the size of that group? Churches,
Churches,
University of
hospitals,
Oregon.
university properties, church properties, charitable. There's a whole host of properties that fall under the exempt category, either fully or partially exempt.
Government,
Government,
Lane County Ice,
Lane County, many different properties.
Watson Stadium.
Usually the university is pretty ironclad on their exemptions as far as for reviewing their properties. But there is always, for me, when I look at a property, for an exempt property, and we open the file and there's no application, that's a sign we probably need to go back and at least send an application out to the property and make sure that they're meeting the statutory requirements for exemptions.
A lot of nonprofit groups, in order to keep going, that might also apply to government, make sales for goods and services. Are those properties exempt when they sell T-shirts and trinkets saying support our wildlife center or support our ice center or whatever, or support our football team?
Really depends on the proceeds for those amounts. It would be a case-by-case basis,
Okay.
but if it met their mission and
To Matthew Knight Arena, when they get the big international stars over there, Elton John, whatever, is that an exempt activity?
that is currently an exempt activity.
Did Elton John donate his services or what?
I'm not sure on
How
that.
about Grateful Dead?
Grateful
I mean,
Dead.
are you going to actually look into that? Or what?
We can, but as far as the University of Oregon has some pretty iron-tight statutes as far as their exempt status, and I know that sometimes it is easier to look at areas that have files that maybe don't have the backup and the information to back up the exemption versus files that have maybe a stack about 4 inches tall or 6 inches tall of information that's been gone through over the recent years. So probably look at the thin files first, and then any area that is undeserving in an exemption definitely is on the table.
But the clinics surrounding the hospital, the private clinics, are not exempt.
For the most part, no.
So when we kick the hospital out of Eugene and give it to Springfield, the clinics that went with them pay taxes on Springfield.
So some of the clinics are exempt under certain statutes. It really depends. It's a case-by-case basis for their structure, if they're nonprofit or.
And with the new legislation that's been proposed this year for clinics, we're looking at both clinics and hospitals to give us more of a bright line of what to look at
That-
for the exemption.
Thank you. That's a really good point. Exempt properties such as, for example, Serenity Lane, other properties where there's really not a bright line besides tax court decisions. The legislature has moved forward with at least giving us a little bit of a better line to work from. There might be still some interpretation, but it's a difficult job, the exemption area, to determine what qualifies and what doesn't at points in time.
Mike, you mentioned being hired to recruit qualified people. Do you have any open positions at this time?
We just hired 2 new appraisers and 2 senior OAs. And then so actually heading on 1 position, we might be fully staffed very soon. So that is actually a rarity for our office, because typically we've had postings that go out, and we may have 2 or 3 people apply for the positions, and those positions remain unfilled for a while, as shown by our prior year's lapse in assessment taxation. It primarily comes from personnel services. So, but by changing the style, what we're looking at, we're trying to look at the, like for a property appraiser, instead of a seasoned property appraiser, a property appraiser 1. So bringing people on in the beginning of either a career cycle or changing their career cycle versus bringing someone that's seasoned on. It's been more fruitful in our recruitment. Also, as the market does change, I hope that we have staff stay on and not have transition into other positions, and so that we won't have any or very limited attrition or limited turnover in assessment taxation. So,
I also noticed you have 48 FTEs in this year's budget and next year's, but your salaries for next year are a little lower than this year.
that is from the attrition from staff retiring, and it's from people that retired at higher steps or left at higher steps, and they're starting at step 1 or step 2 or step 3, and we've had quite a few staff do that over the years.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's also the lapse.
The lapse.
Change.
Yes, that is, thank you, Christine. The lapse change, where we no longer have the, we built the lapse into the budget versus assuming a certain percentage of lapse.
Okay, Commissioner Whitehead?
So my question I have is on the software upgrade, and what, maybe explain a little bit what you hope to, when you get a full upgrade on that, what's the, what do you hope to accomplish, I guess?
Sure. So as we converted our software back during the Y2K scare in mid to late 90s, we did our original request for a proposal in 96, 95. We wrote it and then went out and contracted with, at that time it was ProVal and Ascend for our software services. And that was in 98, 99 when we implemented this software. So the software we currently have now, besides the hot patches and upgrades, it has a basis from the late 90s. And so what we're looking for would be more seamless software, probably more not tied to the clients themselves, more user-friendly for the staff, and also easier for technology services to maintain the software, where it would be such a .NET base where it's just maybe held on the server versus actually on the client and individual installs of the software. But the main driver would probably be legislative changes. As laws change, we're about due for another major change. If we looked at the Measure 5 and Measure 4750, it's been a while since we've had a major tax law change. Our current software provider is required to make changes in their contract for legislative changes. However, it may bump into moving into a new package to get that change made to receive not only required changes, which would be under contract, but to receive the additional changes that would be more user-friendly, more, for example, deeds and records, where we have Helion with deeds and records as a vendor, and we have Thomson Reuters software, Ascend on the taxation side, where we don't have a lot of interconnectivity between those. It'd be nice to have interconnectivity between the software packages, between different divisions.
Do customers have an ability to pay online?
Customers can pay online, yes.
Very good. I haven't walked into a bank in 6 months, so it's very rarely you walk into a brick and mortar bank anymore, and so that's why. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner,
Actually, I'll go ahead and defer, and I'll go last. That's good.
Just to follow up, when you mentioned earlier about your software partners and so forth, are they on the same track as you are as far as with evolving their taxation software and so forth, like you just spoke to, or?
They're all a little bit different as far as, for example, as I mentioned, Clackamas County is probably one step further up than we are this current year. On the ProVal side, they're the same on the Ascend side, our taxation software, ProVal being our assessment software. Some counties that have moved recently off the Thomson Reuters software system or moving off it to go towards other systems that are available statewide. The East Oregon counties primarily are fairly small counties that TS supports, so we were pretty much the driver for the East Oregon counties. And I suspect over the next few years we'll maintain being the driver for those Eastern Oregon counties. Yamhill County, for example, is transitioning right now to Thomson Reuters software. However, other counties that are on Thomson Reuters software are transitioning. One is transitioning or soon will be transitioning to NORCAT's other convenient software. So they tend to go back and forth a little bit.
Because it seems like in most cases you'd fall underneath all the same tax law across the entire state.
All the software systems accomplish the same basic practice, but there's a lot easier ways to get there sometimes. And some systems are more modern than other systems. Also, beyond just how to accomplish the task, looking at how strong the software company is, you want to make sure to go with a software company that has the strength behind it to back up its product versus one that may be a small, statewide system that may not have the depth or the backing for the product. So that's just some considerations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Farr?
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, Blair. Or actually, Phil. I'm sorry.
That's fine. So here under Vibrant Communities, I see delivering superior customer service to all Lane County residents. How do you go about ensuring that staff is doing?
Well, several ways. One, feedback. We're definitely, if someone wants to contact our office, we receive a lot of different emails and phone calls to either myself or Krista being very open to taxpayers to contact us, and also information that comes through the commissioners as far as the field feeds down to us to make sure that if there is a problem or issue that we react to that and make sure to take care of anything that needs to be taken care of. We have very good working relationships with our business partners, such as title companies, and we routinely work with, they talk to them. It's all about talking. It's all about communication. And it's all about asking that we provide the service level that they expect from us, and is there something that we can do better? And that's how we've come across some more enhancements to our system, working with our business partners and our tax districts to see if we can provide a better way to do service for our customers. Because not only our customers are taxpayers, but they're the taxing districts. A good example is the report we're working on right now is the GASB 77 report, where we're attempting to make a universal report for financial reporting that pretty much Lane County and probably all 80, many of the 82 different other districts will be using. And this is a non-compensated report that we were working on that we'll be providing for the taxing districts, that they can use that to fulfill their financial obligations for their auditing requirements, including Lane County. So,
Thank you.
Larry?
Just a quick one, Mike, on fees and charges. I noticed this year you got $15,000 for A&T application fees, nothing last year, and $7,000 for refunds and reimbursements, and nothing in last year's budget.
I think we broke it out further this year. That it was, if we didn't have it in last year, I can look at it and see and get back to you if needed. I can just pull up here as far as for. So I'm looking at the
141.
141, okay.
52.
So the A&T application fee, I believe, if I remember correctly, and Danny or Krista, please correct me if I'm wrong, that might be the BCD charge, $15,000.
I have it in my notes.
Okay, I can get back to the budget committee amount, the exact dollar amount. There are several fees that are sometimes recategorized and that may have existed prior but in a different category. The other question he had was the refund and reimbursements. I believe those two are similar as far as in that one is the BCD refund for ombudsman sending out the community relations fee charge, and I believe another one is one we probably broke out from a prior charge, but I'll get the direct information to the budget committee.
Mike, hey, thanks for all the hard work that you do. And looking at the graph over there, that's a great graphic, by the way. Steve, that is a great graphic. The dollar graphic. You collect all these fees for other jurisdictions. And I have an idea that I think is going to solve our budgetary woes. I'm going to do it in the form of a motion. See the number 32 on there? We'll change the 32 to 22. And the 11 on there, change the 11 to 21. And I think we'll all be happier at the end of the day.
I could change it on the graph.
I can change it on the graph. Always there, be ready with the answer.
But seriously, Mike, thanks for the hard work. You guys are down there in thankless work. Sometimes most people don't fully understand or appreciate the depth of it. Thank you.
Mike, I used to work at taxes. I'm well aware of how you have to allocate the different taxes to the different districts, and we got some, and there was always a question of what went to the city versus everywhere else, and your staff were great working with us.
And just to comment on the hacksaw, went to the grand opening of the project. That was wonderful as far as on Thursday. It was just yesterday. It was beautiful. 14th and Oak, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mike. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Keep the dollars coming in. County administration.
The city council has the same thing. The city council says keep the money coming in too.
Yeah. Is that the one you just cut?
I'm not going to cut schools.
All right.
They're all rolled up.
I'd like to get Cheryl up here to the table as well.
Pull up another chair.
Oh, no, we'll let you keep your seat.
Okay. County administration. Greg, you do not need any more introduction, but perhaps your staff.
Well, thank you. I'm here this afternoon, first and foremost, with our county clerk, Cheryl Betchart, and which button do I push to move us forward?
You moved your time and I'm getting there to go into it. There you go.
All right. There we are. Just very quickly, the mission is to work with rigor and discipline, given the fact that there are many federal, state, and local regulations that apply to elections, voter registration, recording of documents, the issuing of licenses. There's a high degree of discipline that we need to focus on. The services within the program include elections and voter registration, deeds and records recording, marriage license, marriage ceremonies. Hopefully some of you have had a chance to see some of the many ceremonies that occur here in the building, as well as archives and the Board of Property Tax Appeals, better known as BOPTA. Cheryl, do you want to? I'll go ahead and work this for you if you want.
Okay. So just a couple of highlights. We've been able to reduce our general election costs by over $64,000 in the recently conducted general election, and that is in large part due to our new clear ballot tabulation software and equipment. It's very exciting. Our recording revenue is up approximately 5.5%, and our marriage ceremonies have increased by 25%, and that is because we have staff appointment times that are more readily available, so we're looking for that to continue in this next fiscal year. The marriage records are now digitized and available in our public records library, so people can come in and conduct their own research instead of waiting for staff to conduct that research for them. Some highlights: voter registration is up 20% due to the Oregon Motor Voter Law, which was implemented in January of 2016. And our voter registration is nearly 249,000 registered voters, and that will continue to increase as it is implemented in year 3. We have a 10% increase in the number of recorded documents, and that is in large part to the change in the improvement in the economy. More people are buying and selling properties and recording those documents, which is good for our business. We have over 300 marriage ceremonies that we've conducted, and as well as issued over 1,800 marriage licenses. As far as our FTE by program, we have 6.5 FTE assigned to elections. That includes myself, as well as 5.5 FTE for deeds and records and other programs that are our responsibility. If you look at the third column there with Lane, you can see based on voter registration, we are one of the lowest staffed for the size of county that we are. As far as our overall budget by fund, largely we're general fund, 78%. We do have a small revenue fund of 12%, and that is because of certain types of documents that are recorded. There's a special 5% that we're able to receive with the type of recorded document. We also have a 10% election equipment fund, and that covers our maintenance and any special upgrades or software so we can continue to be current with our tabulating equipment. As far as revenue goes, we're largely general fund revenue, which goes from recording fees to our licenses and ceremonies. Those are predominantly what we receive as far as our revenue. And again, the special revenue clerk fund for other assessments based on those various types of documents. And then our equipment fund for the elections. Expenses, we have ongoing expenses that related to elections. Primarily, it's the increase in the voter registration, additional expenses regarding that, which is our materials and services, 40%. Elections are cyclical, and so when it's a heavier election year, our expenses will be higher. We've had an increase in expenses due to the Oregon Motor Voter Law, minimum wage, and then of course postage, and those costs continue to go up, and we need to adjust our budget to reflect those changes. Voter registration, again, will continue to increase in year 3 because of the Oregon Motor Voter Law. We also know that we will have some long-term staff employees that will be retiring this year, and with that comes the challenge of succession planning. It's a big priority for us to continue that continuity of services for our customers so that we're able to provide our services that are all mandated. So we're looking to reclassify some positions due to retirements to kind of accommodate the changes with the technology and also the electronic registration. We have about 70% of our voter registration changes now come electronically versus a paper card, and so with that we've been able to make those adjustments, but that's one of our challenges going into this next year.
So in terms of the strategic plan, I would like to point out under infrastructure, the space allocations. One of the things that the assessor mentioned was the ability to co-locate his staff as a cost savings. Right now, The deeds and records staff are in this building. Election staff is in a separate building. During the election season, most of those deeds and records staff shift over to help with elections. By not having them co-located in the same same place, we really struggle with efficiencies, and we're certainly looking towards that in the future. Other than that, the real partnership with the Secretary of State's office is absolutely critical. There's great attention to accuracy of elections, concern about voter fraud, concern about how fair, equitable, and accessible elections are. Continue to pay attention to that. Cheryl is a leader in this state, serving on a number of Secretary of State committees to look at the future of voting systems, the trends and issues for elections, with an eye towards cost savings. But we work with not only every county clerk, really with every city recorder within the county, as well as state vital records and the Department of Revenue. I think that's it. Do we want to stop for questions? I think.
So, a couple questions on motor voter. And and by the way, Greg, I'm glad you mentioned that about Cheryl. When I ran for the office, I will tell you, Cheryl is highly respected among the clerks around the state. You're really highly thought of. So we're very fortunate to have Cheryl here. Question of motor voter is, when the Associated Board of Counties and the clerks worked on the funding aspect, and I believe, if memory serves me correct, the number that you really wanted, or that we all wanted, was about $1.5 million budgeted from the state on motor voter, but I believe about half that was budgeted. So after going through this process for a good solid year now, have the clerks come back maybe and done an assessment on motor voter, and is that enough money, do you think, to, in a sense, because you have new administrative duties here and new duties as a whole, so is that enough money to put into this? Because from our perspective, this was in a sense a mandate, and it falls under that provision of a mandate, so the state should provide money. So is there some early thoughts on that? I'd be curious. And the next question on the registration, and this is really interesting. So in 2014 in my commission district, 38% were registered Ds, 26 were registered Rs, and 24 were non-affiliated. That number I just looked up, 36 D, 25 R, 31 non-affiliated. That is a huge jump. Non-affiliated, in other words, they're added to the rolls, but obviously they don't care to at least, or they want to stay non-affiliated, who knows? So those are my two questions, but I think on the financial piece, that's the one I'm really interested in. Maybe your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, what the state does is they look at our voter registration in October of every year, and they reimburse us 15 cents per registered active voter. And so that's what the money is based on. I think we had about a little over 30,000 that we've been reimbursed twice now. And
as far as,
pardon me?
Is it enough?
Well, actually, it's a good point. We do have our legislative committee that's going to be looking at the cost again this summer, and that is because recently Secretary Richardson has made a decision to put in a new rule that will mean anybody that's inactive right now because of non-voting in the last 2 general election cycles, which is 5 years, will now be increased to 10 years. And so that means that our voter registration will go up, and that is not something that we've planned for or budgeted for. And I'm on actually the committee to work with the transition of that and to evaluate what that impact will be to us. And that will be the discussion on cost, as well as looking at the Oregon motor voter and whether the 15 cents is accurately reflecting the work that we're doing to maintain those voters on our rolls.
I appreciate that. I have a very positive line of communication with Secretary Richardson.
Yeah.
And so if there's, and that's something I think we need to be cognizant of as not only the Budget Committee, but as the Board of Commissioners, because when I saw that, that was immediately what I thought was, wow, okay, another increase in the budget. So,
right.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorensen?
I have 2 questions. One is, you mentioned the
new software to count the votes. That software, like the old software, is still a paper ballot system where the voter marks their ballot with their own pen and then mails it or brings it in.
Yes.
Yeah, so that didn't change the basics of the way the voter votes and the possibility that you could hand count the election if there was a catastrophic failure of the optical scanning.
That's correct. There's still a paper ballot that you're receiving and casting your vote. What changed with this clear ballot system is that we now digitally scan the ballots and we can do our adjudication on the computer versus a team coming in and manually having to look at all of those and separate out things that are, write-in votes, or maybe if somebody puts a dot instead of filling in the oval, those things we used to have to look at by hand. And now we can actually put our two team of different political parties together at a computer screen. And it's a closed system, so it's not networked with anybody can access it or tamper with it. And they can actually go through and make the decisions then. It's extremely efficient and accurate.
Much faster than the old method of actually looking at it and physically having it.
Yep. We used to sort the ballots every day, and so it's very
my
efficient.
second question is kind of a more bigger question, and that is the state government imposes rules on how we conduct elections, but increasingly the federal government has been passing laws on how elections are conducted, or at least federal elections, how federal elections are conducted. With the state, there's an identified official and group of people, the Secretary of State, the Elections Division, and a constituent asked me the other day, with the increase in federal rules about how to conduct a federal election, is there a comparable organization in the Department of Justice or some other federal agency that we can go to, like the Oregon Elections Division, like the Secretary of State's Division, to say, how do you do this? How do you count these overseas ballots or these different, I think it's called provisional ballots, different federal requirements in running a federal election, U.S. Senate, President, Vice President, U.S. Representative.
Well, what we find is that any changes due to federal legislation are going to be filtered down to the county level through the Secretary of State's office. And so when we hear something going on throughout the country, we're usually we have a very good, strong relationship with the Elections Division and the Secretary so that we can receive that information and find out what the impact would be to our office at the county level.
Is there a federal agency or something that keeps track of when the federal government does pass rules about how to run a federal election? Is there actually, if you wanted to bypass it, or if I wanted to bypass it and call up somebody and say, hey, how do you run a federal election? I want to make sure that we're doing it right. Who would we call?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a federal agency.
Okay.
There is an election commission that monitors throughout all the United States
Right.
as far as whether you have the right equipment, but
it's not the Federal Election Commission that does this.
Right, it's not.
Okay.
So I just know that what we receive comes down from the Secretary of State's office,
Okay.
and they're receiving it from others and as such. So.
Thank you.
Thanks. So Sid already asked my question about financing the motor voters. 15 cents hardly seems like enough to cover even the mailing of a ballot, let alone figuring out which ballot style they were supposed to get this past election. Were there 200 some ballot styles?
247.
Yeah. So, 15 cents just doesn't quite cover it. So my second question was, do you have a way of determining those folks who were added through motor voter, what their turnout was in the last election? Specifically separating by those that were registered under the normal way versus those who have been registered automatically through driver's license.
The Secretary of State will put out the statistics after this election is certified. I know for the general election, we were somewhere between 8 and 10% that were registered through motor voter here in Lane County voted. And I know that everyone is interested to know what that percentage is, and I believe they're going to release that once we certify in early June.
Yeah, so I think that's what's driving the press looks at just our turnout, 25%, and they're not taking into account motor voter. We actually have the same amount of people voting as the last special election in May, but our percent turnout looks bad because we've added a bunch of people to the rolls that really didn't want to be registered anyway.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
We're going to move along to community and economic development. And Sarah Means will be joining me. And we're going to...
We have pretty handouts.
We have pretty handouts involving our Rural Prosperity Initiative. We're going to pass those along. The Services Community and Economic Development is really to support the development to promote vital and sustained economies that lead to job creation opportunities. And we will talk a little bit about our focus on traded sector economic development, the rural community and economic development, and community development and public infrastructure.
So we've had a really great year in community and economic development, and the board has certainly been a huge partner in that success. A few highlights that I just wanted to briefly mention. One, we hired a rural economic development officer. Her name's Kim Thompson. I'm sure at least the board has had the opportunity to meet her. She unfortunately couldn't join us today because she's out doing what she does. But she really does spearhead our Rural Prosperity Initiative, which is the flyer that you have in front of you really explains what that is, and we'd be happy to talk about that at length if you so choose. But it's been really the focus of this last year, and we have been hearing really positive feedback from our rural communities around the effort and the outreach that is going into this program. So we're very pleased about that success story. The board may recall that we did support funding for the Middle Mile, high-speed fiber throughout Lane County. West Fur is lit up. Oak Ridge is coming soon. And really what that is doing is opening doors to the rest of Lane County and high-speed fiber opportunities for all of our rural partners. And so that will be a continued focus moving forward. We launched our Connect newsletter. If you don't receive it, let me know. We'll make sure you get a copy of that every month. It's just another way for us to stay in touch and communicate what we're doing and also what our partners are doing out in Lane County. We continue to support a really great collaboration with Lane Workforce Partnership, the Regional Innovation and Training Grant Program, and started a new program, the Regional Entrepreneurship Funding Program, focused on that sort of third leg of the three-legged stool, entrepreneurship and economic development. And of course, we launched Greater Eugene Inc., and we're a critical partner in that organization.
Hang that up for a bit so we can probably just some of that.
Us in pictures, activity in pictures. If you don't see us in our office, that's because we're out either talking to the governor about rain, at the Forest Products Lab in Wisconsin talking cross-laminated timber, or teaching the Ukrainian delegation Rural Economic Development 101. So a few things that we've done this year. On to the numbers. Our budget, we are entirely funded through video lottery state revenue. We have a general allocation piece of our budget that's really administration, and we also have about $154,000 going to youth services and $105,000 going to land management to support some services going on over there. We have our strategic investment side of things. That is really where the programmatic money comes, so where we find funds to support infrastructure development, dues, grants, that sort of thing. So, and this is consistent with policy that we have in our Lane Manual. So this reflects only our administration budget, but really we're proposing to remain steady. We are anticipating some minor increases with a half-time FTE addition.
So it's a 2.5 FTE program.
We're
right
a 2.5 FTE program right now. We're proposing a half FTE increase for supporting our program, and some minor increases in our materials and services budget to support the rollout, continued rollout of Rural Prosperity. You got this one?
Okay, challenges and changes. Reallocating funds for a project specialist position. Again, that is focusing on the ability to administer this program, create the structure that the team needs to really be out on the road, working with the rural community, working with leaders, and trying to create the economic environment that creates jobs. One of the challenges right now is monitoring lottery funds. As you probably noted in the November election, a lot of different statewide efforts are starting to depend on lottery dollars for their funding. So the future is an intriguing proposition. Just really quickly, in terms of the strategic plan, there's a lot going on. The bread and butter of economic development is in the infrastructure. You'll see continuing to work with Goshen on wastewater and create an environment for industrial engagement. Our partner Springfield is moving forward with their Glenwood refinement plan and are preparing infrastructure needs to approach the county. You've probably noted in the conversations with the City of Eugene and Lane County as we start looking at permanent homes for courthouses and city halls. One of the issues is also a farmer's market, and how can we create an environment downtown to help that happen. So, for partnerships. Sarah and her team works with everybody, both throughout the county, throughout the state, actually throughout the nation, and more with international connections. The chambers of commerce, the specific initiatives like RAIN, local utilities to ensure infrastructure occurs. It is really leveraging every partnership, creativity. We had private foundation folks in meeting with the team today, so it's probably an easier question, who are they not working with?
Greg, Steve, before I forget, could you please make it county policy not to have acronyms in your
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It is tough. We can, if there's...
I can list off anyone that you want.
Well, and I would mention RAIN in particular.
Yeah. RAIN is the Regional Accelerator and Innovation Network. So there's an accelerator both here in Eugene, one in Corvallis. There's now one in Florence. And it's really an opportunity for early stage businesses to come in and incubate in a collaborative setting and accelerate their business and really lead to a more successful start. RDI, Rural Development Initiatives, OEDA, Oregon Economic Development Association, IEDC is the International Economic Development Council. I'm on the board of both of those organizations, LCOG, Lane Council of Governments.
It's so noted. We will correct that.
Yes.
And what's LCC?
Did you say you had fiber going to West Fur and Oak Ridge? I live in Pleasant Hill. Could you tell me how to tap into that?
I think there's a remarkable initiative that will light up the county, that working on rural high-speed fiber is a priority, and there was actually very profitable meetings in Washington, D.C. last week, but also throughout the state. You've had time with the governor talking about how do we move this initiative forward, and it's safe to say we'd be the first county to...
Probably, yeah, to countywide, and certainly a county as rural in nature as ours. That is very problematic, and what we're utilizing is really a new technology that is wireless. And we beta tested it in West Fur for very obvious reasons. There's hills and trees, and it seems to be successful. And so the next Oak Ridge will be coming on board pretty soon, if not already. And then Veneta is sort of the next area that we're working on. because we have a call center in Bonita, FCR, that we recruited there a few years ago that needs redundancy. And so it's very important in order to keep those rural businesses going.
So I have a question, it won't take a lot of time here, but if you could contact me, I had a constituent concern just this last week, home business, can't get online, it's affecting their business. This is Bailey Hill area.
Okay.
So give me a call.
I will do that.
And, let's chat about that.
I will do that. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner?
No, I was going to tag on to the comments about the high-speed internet. You know, one of the things that's exciting is if we can bring that redundant fiber out to Bonita for the call center. There's also a provider that wants to utilize that fiber to develop a wireless system in the Bonita area that will compete with CenturyLink's DSL system, which is badly needed because when you get out into the rural areas, you're either HughesNet or site and a satellite dish, which is incredibly slow at times, or if you're lucky enough to be close to a central exchange on CenturyLink's copper system, you might be able to get DSL at up to 5 megabytes a second, which is incredibly slow when you're talking about some of the a home office with my wife runs. So if you're not south-facing, and you're not close enough to a central office, there's nothing. And these wireless systems they're talking about, where it's multiple stations of antennas, are going to probably become the wave of the future and the way internet's going to happen in the future. And I think Bonita's looking to move that forward, and they have, with the help of Lane County supporting them with a Rural Prosperity Initiative, they've got an Economic Development Committee that's really committed to doing that. And I think that somebody of your chairs that committee.
Vice Chair, but
Vice Chair.
may I tag on being part of that?
And then, I got Greg and Peter after that.
Just very quickly, want to brag on my boss for a moment. One of the things that Seymour Breisky mentioned was we created the Rural Prosperity Initiative is he wanted the county to communicate better across departments and be less siloed. And the Rural Prosperity Initiative has taken it upon itself to bring together staff that have rural functions, transportation, fiber, whatever it might be, to get together on a regular basis and talk about initiatives and overcome hurdles. And Kim Thompson, who Sarah mentioned earlier, has actually been that point, Commissioner Williams, where we've identified a specific issue and concern, and she's very quickly worked with staff to coordinate a response. So I think this is a program that's hitting on all cylinders and is helping the county be better, not only in terms of its interface with community members, but actually with itself and working across those departments.
So really quick, because internet technology, it doesn't have to be complicated, but one thing to remember is that what we're talking about wireless, is we're talking about last mile. So you're really talking about distribution. It's hard to beat the speed of light, which is what you get with fiber optic cables. You use fiber optic cables for long distance transmission and consolidation, and then wireless for last mile services. There is a great opportunity for somebody like Lane County, who basically, you have a lot of physical locations, you have a lot of infrastructure and so forth, and I guess from an economic development perspective, great opportunities for public-private partnerships where it doesn't cost the county anything to let somebody necessarily use a back corner of a piece of property to put a tower on or to be able to do the connects, and it adds great value to those people, especially the rural people who are just, I guess we're all suffering now for not being connected. So anyway.
Commissioner?
I just wanted to say I think this is a really nice brochure, and I'm curious, I heard a lot about the Greater Eugene Inc. and the metropolitan cities, certainly the University of Oregon, LCC, the point being that there's a large population base within the Eugene-Springfield area that is part of the metropolitan area, not necessarily rural, but not necessarily in formerly Eugene or Springfield, or now Coburg is part of our for some purposes, for our federal region. So what can you tell me about what you're doing to help the unemployment problems in underemployed areas of Eugene and Springfield, and specifically, poor people that live in Eugene and Springfield? This brochure obviously does the job to communicate that we are trying to worry about the rural prosperity component of our responsibilities. But what bothers me is that when we talk about the rural poor, why aren't we talking about the urban poor? Why is the rural poor, important, but the urban poor is not? So I get it that there's an important rural component, and I'm all in favor of that. But I'm also interested in what are we doing in our economic development, responsibility to deal with urban poor.
So I would say that, yes, while a lot of our focus over the last year has been sort of refocused on a rural initiative, because, over the last number of years, I think we had a tendency to focus more on the metropolitan area. So I think what we've tried to do this last year is balance our time a little bit more equitably. And so Kim in our office really does have that rural perspective. I, on the other hand, tend to stay closer to Eugene and Springfield and work with our partners here locally on those exact issues. So whether it be city folks both in Eugene or Springfield working on, let's say, Glenwood redevelopment or, what have you. Those are things that I have taken on personally in the division of labor, so to speak, within our program. We certainly work with, you're very well aware of the work that Lane Workforce Partnership does, and we're certainly good partners together working.
Another set of letters, maybe.
Another set of letters. We filled that one out.
That's filled out. Wow.
So I hope that answers your question, Commissioner, but we really have tried to divide the labor, so to speak, with it internally so that we are equitably representing our entire county.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So real quickly on this piece. As a one-time executive director of the Eugene Springfield Metro Partnership before we became the Lane Metro Partnership, I will say from an urban standpoint and from where Greater Eugene Inc. is, Lane County is half the budget. So Lane County is contributing significantly. And then also as the longest tenured mayor in the history of the city of Springfield, working very closely with a terrific economic development director named John Tamulonis for many years. What happens, I think, overall is that the cities really focus on their economic development areas within the cities. And my personal opinion is right now Lane County is a much better support to the cities than when I was mayor. I frankly, we couldn't get much out of Peter Thurston, and when he was the director here, and we're trying to work with the city. So we clearly focused on our enterprise zones. We focused on what we had to offer, but with very little support that came from Lane County. I believe strongly Sarah is one of the best support as far as both Eugene and Springfield are concerned. And they should be very fortunate and very happy that Sarah's in this position to be their support. Because of the fact that Lane County is able to tap into the video lottery funds, which brings me up to my real question, and that is, so right now you're feeling pretty good about the revenue and the video lottery, but do you have maybe a crystal ball for the next 5 years?
Well, if I did, I wouldn't be sitting here.
I know, and I'm really saying the next 5 years because I think Greg brought up something that's very important. This last election in 2016, we had three major measures that tapped into video lottery money or lottery money. And while I'm supportive of most, especially the CTE, frankly, that made all the sense in the world to me. At the same time, it does concern about where your budget's going to be coming from in the future, and how will this again go into the tax reform conversation, that should have happened 25 years ago at the legislature and still hasn't happened today. So my question on that is, are you really just kind of looking at year to year? Are you able to look out maybe 5 years? Is technology changing on the video lottery side? Is there a trend showing that people are not going towards that as much? And so those are my questions on that. And one last thing I'll say, as I mentioned with Cheryl before, we're very fortunate to have Sarah mentioned she's on the board of OEDA and IEDC, and she just mentioned it just like that. Why I think what's very important to take time and say we're very, very fortunate that Sarah's on the board of those two organizations, because that puts Lane County in a key piece, not just here in the state, but nationally and internationally. And we're very fortunate to have her on those positions. But to my question on the budget.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. I appreciate that. So on the budget, no, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, but we do have the next best thing, which is the forecast. And the forecast was looking pretty good, actually. The most recent one came out last week on, I think, Tuesday. It is looking pretty good. What I think we need to do as a county and with our staff, make sure that we continue to get in front of folks like the governor and her key staff and our delegation to make sure they are well aware of the good work that this county funding does. And how important it is to not only us as the county, but all of our partners. And because as long as, they've managed to keep the county lottery funds intact this year, and not only intact, it went up by a moderate amount. And so with the forecast the way that it is, I would anticipate something similar to that over the next several bienniums. But that all could get taken away if they don't really understand how this money is used and the important way that it's used. And so I think there's a level of education that can continue to not only really build over the next several years as we face some of these challenges at the state level.
Unless we can clone Lee Byer, which I don't think we can.
Right.
Commissioner Farr?
Commissioner, I can cover that.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully there's no more questions. It can't wait till after the break. That's 25 after. Okay. 3:25. We're a little bit behind schedule. So let's get going with internal services. Commissioner Mokrohevsky.
Well, I don't answer to that title. You didn't want the demotion.
Don't demote it.
I don't want the responsibility. Mr. Chair and committee members, good afternoon. Steve Mokrohevsky, Lane County Administrator. And what we're doing here today, this is new. Each year we've sort of made some adjustments to the budget committee process in terms of how we presented departments to you. We started a couple years ago breaking out public safety, and so you're hearing from all the public safety functions in a day, and then you're hearing from the infrastructure, public works, and infrastructure related folks, and then you hear from the health and human service. This presentation is new in that we have brought together various divisions. This is not. This doesn't fit cleanly under an org chart in terms of clear lines of responsibility, or even from a budget or fund standpoint. But given the fact that we have had such a focus on internal expenses, we wanted you to have the benefit of hearing a sort of overview of our internal services and the work that we've done there. So you've heard us talk about these two goals. You're probably sick of hearing us talk about these two goals, but we're not going to stop talking about them, because part of the way that we achieve success is by focusing our efforts on clear goals. So being, creating long-term financial stability through a structurally balanced budget, and repairing critical services that make our community safer, healthier, and more vibrant. And this is really how we've approached doing that. And I'm going to focus, we're all going to focus here for the next few minutes on that third bullet, internal expense savings, that you've heard us talk a lot about. Lane County has faced many years of declining resources and forced to make reductions in critical services to the community. Over the last several years, we've said, enough, we can't further erode services to the community. Let's really focus on our internal expenses. Now, I will say, we have to have internal infrastructure in the organization. We have to have internal services that provide service to other areas in the organization for the organization to operate effectively. Our goal has been to identify how we can operate in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible, so that we can put limited resources into direct services for the community and still balance our budget. So these are the, you can go to the next one. These are the areas that we'll talk about here: County Council, Human Resources, General Expense, Technology Services, Fleet and General Services, and then some areas of county administration, again with the focus on the things that we have done. Again, not looking at how we can identify positions as they become vacant and restructure or change, and have an eye towards how the organization needs to evolve for the future. And also really look at large pots of money that so you're going to hear about management of our debt, management of our health insurance expenses. We went 3 years ago, we said we have $25 million each year we spend on employee health insurance. It's a critical component of benefits for our employees, and we know that that's a valued benefit for the folks that we recruit and retain. But the better that we can manage that pool of resources and shrink it, that allows us the ability to invest limited resources in direct services for the community. Workers' compensation, general liability, technology, fleet, all of those things you're going to hear our folks talk about. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Dingle, our county council.
Is somebody looking about?
Sue's got it.
Oh, thank you. All right, good afternoon. I'm Steve Dingle, Lane County Council. Here's an overview of my department. You'll notice that we actually, because we bill indirectly, we actually bring in more money than what we spend. The important thing I want you to point out just on this slide is that we made the decision in 2012 to turn the Office of County Council into a complete functioning modern law office. I think in the year before I got here in 2012, I think we spent about $700,000 on outside counsel, various departments did. So we brought that money in-house, and now that we have a full service law office, so that money no longer goes out the door. These are some of the things that we've had to deal with. We lost a long-time attorney. We're doing workforce planning, which is what are we going to do as we move forward so that we maintain that institutional knowledge and our clients don't have to pay for it again. We want to make sure that we transition that knowledge to the next generation of attorneys. Here's one of the things some of the things I want to focus on and give you some real numbers. We've been worked very hard to find ways to reduce costs to the county. The one thing I want to emphasize is it requires a team. So we work with human resources, we work with our individual clients, and I want to give you, in addition to some of these up here, give you some of the real numbers in terms of the amount of savings that we've been able to achieve. Let's talk, for example, about the green one, the workers' compensation. In fiscal FY12, which is when we started the program, we paid out $1.5 million in claims. We had 94 claims. In the last complete year, fiscal year 16, and we paid out $716,000 on 68 claims. Here's the other thing: we're self-insured. We used to have to keep on file $2.7 million to cover the cost based on what they said we had to have available to pay our claims. 2016, that was down to $773. That's $2 million that's not just parked there. And we've had the same sort of success across the risk fund, same sort of thing, reduce risk. We lower the amount of money that has to be retained, and we reduce the amount of money that's being paid out in claims that's available for other kinds of services. Same thing with unemployment. So I just use that as an example. The middle one, training, same sort of thing. Best investment we have. I say all the time, it's a bad idea to manage or to run an organization by litigation. Litigation is extremely inefficient and it's very expensive. And the workforce planning, you can see we brought in, we restructured things and we're able to bring in, Steve worked with us to bring in a new Assistant County Counsel 1, which increases our ability to deliver services and meets that need of bringing up the next generation of attorneys. Oh, I didn't know I had another slide. Well, we're going to continue to do this. We look for creative ways to, in addition to the training to reduce risk, we also look for ways to outsource risk. I would say one of the most successful examples of that is working when we went and contracted out the medical services in the jail. It's one of our highest risk exposures, and now that exposure is off of us. Did I meet my 3 minutes?
You did.
Very good.
You did. Great.
Test.
I did know what you were going to do. We're going to do. Oh, okay. I didn't know. All right.
Well, my preference would be to go through like we did with Health and Human Services and then ask questions.
Okay.
Since everybody will.
I thought that was kind of the plan. So okay.
Okay. Is someone, is that okay?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a question either way. It's a question either way.
Well, as the slide says, I'm Marcia Edwards, and I'm the Human Resources Director. This is a little bit about HR, approximately a $2.4 million budget. 18 of us in Human Resources, and some of the things we do there are workers' compensation, safety, classification, and compensation. We also do employee relations. We work very closely, as Steve Dingle had mentioned, with County Counsel to negotiate our 7 collective bargaining agreements. We do benefits and wellness. We run a lot of wellness sessions throughout the year. Some of the changes, online performance management. We're very focused in Human Resources on automating as many processes as we can. The online performance management system is something that we developed and are introducing in this fiscal year. The Leadership Development Series, we're focused on providing training, again, to our supervisors and allowing folks to be able to learn so they can move up in their jobs. And health plan redesign. We're going to be talking about that more in HR in the coming year, about how we can design a health insurance plan that meets our employees' needs and also meets the needs of the county in managing our budget. We're also partnering with technology services on the PeopleSoft 9.2 migration, which is a project that is certainly very much on our minds, as it takes a lot of time and manpower. And also we're going to be centralizing and digitizing our recruitment files. Again, we're trying to automate as many processes as possible. So when Steve wants to look at one of his direct reports, personnel files, I want him to be able to look that up online, and also with our recruitment files. Some of the challenges, of course, getting our folks the training that they need as they're trying to accomplish all of this in their day-to-day jobs, while also implementing these new things. Recruiting for specialized positions. There are positions certainly in technology and positions in the medical field that are always a challenge because of the competition out there. So that's going to continue to be a challenge for us. The negotiation of our collective bargaining agreements, as was just mentioned today, we are always bargaining with one of our units. So that's just an ongoing need. The uncertainty of federal health insurance requirements. And then, of course, our automation of HR processes. It's not only balancing what we can do internally and what our staff can manage as we go about automating these processes, it's also how much change our customers can handle as we're moving through those. So a little bit about cost savings. This is really about our Live Well Center, which is our employee clinic. In August of 15, we moved to a self-funded model for health insurance. In September of that same year, we selected Marathon Health to help us get that clinic up and running and manage that clinic. And in February of 2016, we were able to open the Live Well Center. So what we're doing also around that is ongoing. We're in negotiations with our bargaining units, and we've been able to negotiate cost sharing with 5 of the 7 bargaining units so far. And then in its first year, Marathon Health reports that we have seen a 1.4 to 1 return on investment for the Live Well Center. Some of the highlights of what we've accomplished through the implementation of our online learning management system, which is known as LEAP. We've been able to increase the number of learners and the number of training hours. Training hours, I think, are over 40,000 now. Let's see, just kind of picking and choosing here. We increased our applicants to 7,440 in calendar year 16, and that's up over 1,800 from the previous year. The way we've done that is we've taken a more proactive approach to our recruitment, and that has had our recruiter reaching out to different groups in the community, and also conducting job fairs and running application workshops for internal and external applicants so they can learn more about employment at Lane County and how to become employed here. Let's see. We're also looking into different ways we can use our Live Well Center to save some money. Audit Public Works, some of their positions require a commercial driver's license. So we're now running those folks through the Live Well Center to do their CDL physicals, and that saved about $8,000 a year. Also, we've run a countywide internship program for underrepresented groups. We've run a couple of those programs and are currently in the process of recruiting for a third. And I think that's all I'm going to touch on, besides the needs assessment that was completed for our leadership development series over this past fall. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about general expense. For those new committee members, this is not an area that provides any service, but there's a lot of money within general expense. It contains our debt service funds, our general fund reserve. So the entire budget in general expense is about $188 million. Expenses are about $141 million. That difference is the discretionary general fund that departments are using, which is in the 40s for 17, 18, 40 million range. So there's no FTE, as I mentioned, no service out of here. It also includes the risk and benefit funds and some Title III funds, which were left over from the Secure Rural Schools payments. We still have funds available from the 2015-2016. And then also the funding, the TRT and the video lottery that you just heard about from economic development actually comes into general expense and is then transferred out to the places that use it. And finally, then a couple that are just passed through, the extension service levy and the county school fund. We receive into our budget, but then directly transfer those out as needed. So this shows the fund breakdown. The internal service funds are by far the largest part of general expense. The risk fund and the benefit fund, including our new self-funded insurance fund, is in here. Our debt payments also include part of the reserve from the prepayment of our debt. You remember a couple years ago we put in some extra funds to prepay debt, so that is also sitting in there. We also have one trust fund, which is a retiree medical fund. That's a legacy benefit. Employees being hired now and actually over about the last 15, 18 years do not receive this benefit, but it is something that was promised to previous employees, so we have funding to provide that benefit to them. So some highlights, the debt prepayment, as I mentioned, and refunding. So I think some of you have heard or read in your budget document that we're also refunding one of our bonds. The prepayment was planned over the last 2 budget years, but our financial advisors let us know that one of them, our 2009 bond, could be refunded and have better interest rates, and we could save even more than we had planned. So the total savings from both of those efforts will be about $3.6 million in interest payments, so money that the taxpayers will not pay. Our bond rating has been increased, as you heard, so we are now the highest bond rating that we've had in Lane County history.
Can you say that again more slowly?
I'm trying to get my 3 minutes. I can't break the rules. Tourism is growing very strong. That's the transient room tax. The last few years, we've even had some double-digit increases. We're being a little more conservative the next 2 years, but of course, gearing up for those World Games, which will have it boom that year. Secure Rural Schools, just so you know how much of the Title III is, about $2.5 million. The self-funded health insurance. I wanted to take just a minute to touch on some more information on the efforts around the health insurance savings, since we're focusing on cost saving. So as you've heard, we're keeping our insurance rates flat for the 3rd year. This is our 3rd year of being self-funded, so they've been flat since we first went self-funded. But this actually goes back just a little bit further. I did some research this morning. Back before fiscal year 11-12, I remember looking back 10 years at our premium growth, and we had almost 100% growth in 10 years. After that time, the first effort that the county really made was to change our health plans. Some of you that have been here longer remember that the unions each had their own 2 health plans, and they were all varying degrees of expense, of benefits. It was a mess to administrate it. It cost us more from Pacific Source because we had so many plans. So the first goal we had was to get everyone on 2 plans, and so that was accomplished in 12-13. When that happened, we did see our expenses go down by about $2 million that first year that happened. So that was the first step. And then they gradually started growing again. And then prior to 15-16, we were fully insured, as you've heard, so we went to being self-funded. So before 15-16, we had to pay those monthly premiums to the insurance company, regardless if somebody was using going to the doctor and filing claims. You paid that premium for everybody starting on day 1 of the fiscal year. So changing to self-funded, which we've mentioned before, really helped our cash flow too. We didn't have to pay that premium out to the insurance company starting on day 1. We pay the claims as they come through. So some other steps that were taken, we did a dependent eligibility audit in 2015 as we geared up to become self-funded to make sure that the right people were on our plans. In August of 2015 is when we went self-funded. We used refunds that we had received from our insurance company to fund our reserve to go self-funded. So it didn't cost us any more at that point. The deal we had with Pacific Source was at the end of every year, if our claims were a certain percentage of what we had paid them, we would actually get a refund back. But of course we didn't have that money to use all year. So that's the benefit of not paying them that money to begin with. As was mentioned, in February of 2016, we opened the Employee Would Live Well Center. So we did see a decrease in claims beginning in 15-16. Some of that's going to be due to the Live Well Center. Some of it's just luck of the draw of what's happening. Claims will vary over the years. But some highlights on numbers for you. So when I look back at the claims filed in 11-12, fiscal year 11-12, they were 20 million. In 17-18, we think we will be just under 20 million for our claims. In final total expenses, when I take into account the refund that Pacific Source would send us back later, 11-12, we were at 21.8 million. After we made those changes to the 2 plans, We dipped just a little bit, 19.4. For 17-18, we'll only be at 23.1. I shouldn't say only. That's a very big number. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that's an increase of only 6% over 6 years. So as I just mentioned, we had a 10-year period back in the 2000s when we saw almost 100% growth in our premiums. And now the changes we've made since 12-13 have held that growth to just under 6% in the last 6 years. Let's see if I have anything else. I mentioned the rates, and then the things that are coming still. So we're not done yet. As HR mentioned, they're going to look at health plan redesign coming in, and the clinic should be gearing up more and saving more in that side. So that has made a big impact. That's it.
Michael.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Finch. I'm the Technology Services Director, here to talk about the Technology Services budget. We have resources of around $16.9 million. We have a 69.75 FTE spread across 9 divisions, which support everything from back-end infrastructure, network servers, data center, up through the end desktop experience for the user, and security, so antivirus and all that. Our budget is broken into 2 funds. We have a technology replacement fund that is there to replace our infrastructure. And then we have a technology services fund, which is an internal services fund for our operations, personnel, and pass-through. As far as our revenues go, this breaks out the revenues across us. I'm highlighting local revenues here. This is services we provide to our partners, which I'll discuss on the next slide. As far as our expenses, this slide represents the different kinds of expenses, from personal expense to materials and services and such. Just a couple highlights on here I'll talk about is there's costs that come through us that we can control and some that we can't control. And some of the big impacts this year were indirect increases for some data center depreciation, and then what we can control, the focus on service delivery optimization that has helped control some of that. With regard to changes this year, talking about that service delivery strategy, so really taking the reins and trying to optimize how our work is being performed. We've had some vacancies this year, and we're able to reconfigure the work and do some entry-level and mid-level classifications that help avoid some bottom line in the future, and also get us in touch with jobs coming out of onto the market from colleges and universities and such. We've had some PCRF adjustments and running our equipment longer. And then, of course, on the challenges side, we have fiscal constraints weighed against increasing demand for technology services in our businesses, and also dealing with growing cybersecurity challenges and threats to our organization. WannaCry was the latest one you've probably all seen in the headlines, and thanks to our diligent efforts and making sure we're patched, able to stay ahead of that. Talking about that revenue that's coming in from our partners, we have a regional technology partnership with the local cities, Eugene, Springfield, eWeb, LCOG, that all partner with us on sharing a data center, some services here, networks that help us pool costs, which is great, generates savings for us, but it also generates savings for those other organizations, which benefit the taxpayer overall. Expanding role with other external customers too, some counties for support with tax software and such. And then just some highlights of outcomes, both from ways we're tackling our bottom line and also impacts to services in the positive. So successes in the remote and mobile access, virtualizing our server infrastructure, strengthening our partnerships, but also some cost-saving initiatives that we have an independent IT business review going on right now that's being provided to go through our services to take us to even higher level of being able to make sure we're staying ahead of costs and optimizing our service delivery for our business needs here at the county. All right, seeing through that.
Hi, I'm Tim Elsey. I'm the Public Works Director. I've previously spoken to you about the 7 other divisions in Public Works, and today I'm speaking to you about Fleet and General Services, which is our internal-facing division, which is well run by Michael Johns and his leadership team. In fleet and general services, we maintain all of the purchasing and leasing of the heavy equipment and light-duty vehicles in the county, and that includes all of the other elected officials and not just the county commissioners. We also maintain all of the facilities minus the Lane Event Center and the jail. We do this with total revenues of $7.8 million, and then you'll see that our total requirement of about $36.3 million. Most of those requirements are in the form of fleet reserves, which comes in right at $24 million, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So fleet operations, we do that for about $8.3 million, and then facilities, again, which includes custodial services, we do for about $4 million a year. We do that with 46 and a half full-time equivalent employees, with 21 of those coming in fleet and 25 and a half coming from facilities. And looking at our budget overview for our resources, again, you'll see that our total revenue is about $11.8 million. Most of that comes in fees and charges. About $7.5 million comes in fleet fees and charges. The other bulk of our charges come from administrative charges, and that's for facilities and custodial services. We also have what we refer to here as property and rentals, and that is for the sale of capital assets. That's for our auction that we do every year. And then we also get about $280,000 in interest earnings. When you look at our overall budget requirements, again, that's at $36.3 million, and we do that with personnel expenses at about $4.5 million, and then materials and services at about $5.3 million. You'll also see that this year we're going to purchase about $2 million in capital assets, that's heavy equipment. And then you'll see a fiscal transaction of $600,000. Those are monies that are collected for replacement of sheriff vehicles that are transferred to the sheriff, and the sheriff can only use those monies to purchase sheriff vehicles, but they're transferred into an account that the sheriff maintains. And then, of course, again, the reserves and contingencies of about $24 million. For our changes and challenges ahead, we've done a lot to cut expenses in the fleet division in the last 2 years. As a matter of fact, we've cut our expenses each year for the last 2 years, and this year it's down 4.9%, but that's not quite enough. We're also going through an internal audit review this coming year to see if there are any other efficiencies that we can claim, but also to ensure that the services that we provide are the right services for our team, and finally to look at the reserve to make sure that our reserve calculations are correct and that the reserve amount is the right amount for us to maintain. Similarly, in the facilities department, we continue with the same rate structure that we inherited when facilities came over from county admin a couple of years ago. That rate structure is basically just a per square foot rate structure, and that doesn't matter if it's office space or if it's a clinic. And so we're going to look at that rate structure to see if that's a rate structure that makes sense or if that's one that we need to look at. My feeling is that we're going to have to look at that and change that rate structure a little bit. Part of our service challenges, of course, are that our assets are aging and the requirements for preventive maintenance are going up, while at the same time the request for services is not going down. So we're going to have to balance the added services required with the expectation level for our services. In the fleet services challenges, we have to look at the decrease in vehicles, and what I mean by that is we are trying to decrease the fleet vehicles by 10% over a 2-year period. At this point, we've decreased those vehicles by 6.1%, but the challenge then is ensuring that the vehicles that we have left can serve the needs of the customers that we serve. And then also we have a newer workforce based on the VSIPs that the county has gone through the previous years. For cost savings measures, as I mentioned, we had a goal to reduce permanent vehicles of fleet by 10% over 2 years. We're at 6.1%. We've eliminated procurement of diesel pickups. The traditional wisdom in the past was that diesel pickups could last over a lifetime longer than gas pickups, and therefore the per mile cost was less. That has changed. And so now per mile cost on a gasoline vehicle is less than a diesel pickup. We've tightened the requirements for purchase of additional vehicles. As a matter of fact, if any department wants an additional vehicle, that has to be approved by the county administrator. The life cycle of the fleet has increased approximately 20%. and the replacement ratio for vehicles was reduced from 90% to 80%, and this resulted in a decrease in replacement fund contributions. Again, over the past 2 years, we have decreased our expenses by about $1.14 million. Highlights of our outcomes include 22 vehicles or equipment that have been replaced over the last year. We currently maintain 398 vehicles. Out of those, 212 are heavy equipment. We have 12 pending Sheriff's Department vehicle upgrades. I mentioned before the 6.1% reduction in the number of vehicles and equipment. We maintain over 633,000 square feet of office or clinic space that's cleaned every single night with the FTEs that I mentioned to you earlier. We've completed 621 preventive maintenance services, and we've purchased 355,000 gallons of renewable diesel and gasoline. And you'll notice that I said renewable diesel, and that is a program that Michael Johns has put the county on a couple of years ago, where we only purchase renewable diesel now for our diesel vehicles.
We wait till after. Okay.
All right, continuing right along, I'm going to talk about county administration as well as operations. This can be confusing to some, although we've worked this out quite well internally. Operations is a subset of the county administration overview. This really permits the county administrator to use his time strategically while I can focus on the units and programs that need ongoing support. Within the county administration highlights, I'd like to focus, we have a little bit over 1 FTE focused on federal and state affairs, and those are pretty big relations. So training staff to take their content expertise and help us work a legislative agenda is critical, and it's a facilitative piece. We do have the Equity and Access Advisory Board up and running. 12 out of 15 positions are filled. We're still looking for rural representatives, and we're still working on a gender balance on that advisory board, but it's hitting on all cylinders. And the improvement, we've worked really hard on internal and external communications. Our public information officer is a rock star. If you've not had a chance to work with Devin Ashbridge, please find time to do so. Within the operations, we're looking at about 17.63 FTE. The majority of those are 13 FTE within financial services. And we have in the room both our accountant and our supervisors within financial services. It's a pretty fabulous team. Changes ahead. You will note in the budget that we're restoring the purchasing supervisor position. This is a position that went away in 2012, and we really need that position to function not only on the equity and access and helping to promote purchasing for small emerging business, women-owned, minority-owned businesses here in Lane County. There are certainly regulatory elements around purchasing and procurement that we need to attend to. And we really believe there's going to be some significant cost savings by having a centralized partner to help us look at those functions. The county commissioners had a twofer this past year with the Forest Work Camp, not only working to benefit veterans in our county, it also got us out from under $220,000 of annual ongoing expenses. So that was a tremendous change. The challenges, keeping up with federal reporting standards, continue to be a challenge. We're also looking at a payroll and accounting software application upgrades. That is tantamount to changing over the mechanics of an airplane while in flight. None of the work actually stops as those upgrades occur. And again, within the function of capital improvement, the demands are large, the resources are limited. Looking at partnerships, the functions of operations work with everybody. You might have noticed on that first chart that there was a separation between those that are internal facing versus those that are external facing. Actually, most of them have an external function, whether it's economic development or the communications or financial services, working on purchasing and procurement. We really work a lot with everybody. You had a chance to go celebrate the Oaks at 14th. You saw some of operations work with HACSA and sponsors and really some remarkable partnerships. Highlights and outcomes. Can I say again that the refunding of the 2009 bond saved $3.6 million? I think I will. The bond rating has been mentioned. It's worth mentioning again. I am personally very excited about having a fully staffed finance team. The Forest Work Camp I just mentioned. The courthouse is moving on apace. You'll be able to read about it as well as attend to it as we've completed the needs assessment, we've completed site review work, and now we're working with the city to look at the site acquisition. I wanted to touch very quickly on equity and access. This is one of your initiatives from last budget cycle. The framework is in place. The Human Rights Advisory Body is up and going. 12 out of those 15 seats are filled. We are working on the institutionalizing the equity efforts. There's one FTE dedicated to this within county administration, within operations, and at the same time, this leverages resources in our partners, primarily with human resources and what's going on with their recruitment, selection, and training issues, but it's a full county lift to help make that equity work move forward. I think that might be it.
So just in summary here, Mr. Chair, that was a lot to throw at you. I know we started about 10 minutes late, so hopefully we'll have some time here for questions. I think just the last comment that I would make is that this really has been a team effort. We have been laser focused in the last several years in saying we're not going to look at or touch another direct service in terms of considering a reduction to another direct service until we have done everything we can do on our internal services. That takes a lot of work, and it also takes time. I will tell you frankly, I think it's easy to cut services. It's painful. So it's difficult in the sense that it's painful, but it's not a lot of work to cut a position or to cut a service. And it is a lot of work, and it does take a lot of time, and it takes a lot of patience to put in the investment that has been required to do all of these different pieces to save a significant amount of resources, cumulatively balance our budget, and then be able to strategically invest in the areas that are really critical. So I'm very proud of the team that's in this room. I just call it a few folks who are not in the room. Mary Miller and Lizzie Cunningham, our benefits team in HR, did a fantastic job with the self-funded health insurance and the wellness clinic. Inga Anrud, Andrea Nagels, and Kristen Mayfair on the negotiation side, working with our bargaining units, 5 of 7 now, on contributions to health plans. Keena Langhorn, who is leading our workers' compensation effort, and you heard from Mr. Dingle the significant improvements and declines in claims that we've seen there. Lisa Lacey, our risk manager, and all the great work happening in general liability. Of course, Mo Young and Sarah Chinsky on the equity and access work. Robert Tinto and his whole team in financial services. So and I'm sure I missed other folks, but it's really been a great team effort, and I'm proud of the work that's been accomplished that's allowed us for 2 years in a row to have, I think, 0 public comments during this budget process. And really, hopefully allowed the budget committee to have more discussions on how we're delivering services and how we can start investing in enhancing services as we move forward.
Okay.
So happy to take questions.
Commissioner Sorensen.
I just wanted to ask, seems like there's a theme here with the legal office bringing more of the work internally and not having as many consultants and outside lawyers. Same thing happened in insurance with taking the insurance from having it be a traditional health insurance policy to being a self-administered policy. And I just wanted to compliment the county administration on those decisions. One that is an opportunity, and I don't know where it stands, and that's why I'll ask the question, is in the public works arena. We used to, and I don't know if we still do, have some capital out there at Delta. Maybe I'm thinking of things like specialized equipment, like striping roads and highways, or fixing vehicles, and you've got this garage, and you've got all this high-tech equipment that can fix vehicles, and if you have a half-time operation and you're operating it for 4 hours a day, you're still paying for the capital cost for 24 hours a day. If it's 8 hours a day, well, you still have, some capital costs there that you can maybe use in terms of putting more labor on if you have the business. So I guess that's my question for Public Works, because I had more dollar questions, savings questions in the two other areas, but like in Public Works, maybe Tim could come up and just talk a little bit about whether you're doing vehicle repairs for state troopers, like
right. We formed an IGA with other agencies in the area from about Salem down a couple years ago. So we do work with eWeb, Springfield, Eugene. We've done fabrication work for Lincoln County, and vice versa. I'll take hydraulic work to eWeb because they're experts at that. I'm an expert at fabrication, so we do that work for that. So that way, we're all got revenue coming in, and people like
from each other
instead of sending the work downtown.
We like more revenue.
Yeah. So we've been working on that pretty aggressively.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the striping machine and the contract with ODOT?
Well, I know Roads does do contracts for other agencies also. Same thing.
Do we still get ODOT contract and stripe the state highways within our area?
I don't know that.
I know we have IGAs where we do striping for other agencies. I'm not positive.
Yeah. Could you just shoot us an email on the status of that? I think that was a good opportunity if it still exists. That was a $300,000 piece of equipment.
Right.
It's not just a guy dipping a piece of...
No, it's very expensive.
Yeah. So, okay, and I just wanted to finish by saying I really appreciate this kind of ingenuity and energy.
Thanks.
Okay.
Just a quick question on the budget. I noticed on page 154, intergovernmental agreements is down by, well, the current budget is 647 and proposed budget is 7,000.
I can't answer that specific since that's the whole department rolled in together, including our direct services, so we'd have to look at where that's occurring.
That's a big cut.
And it could be that it shifted elsewhere, but yeah, we'll have to find out.
And I also noticed general liability is way down, and Steve, that's probably you talking about the risk, and so you budgeted a lot less for general liability.
Right, and they do things like we do have to report, and our past history is a predictor of future rates.
I was just going to say, in that case, I can tell you, county administration had a big claim fall off. So we do a 5-year look back of what we have to pay back to the risk fund, and it was the claim finally went off, so it made a big difference. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions for internal services?
I'll shoot one real quick. On the IT security question, Mike, I heard from County Council and Human Resources about training as being a way to control costs and so forth. What's the county doing as far as training for employees when it comes to the realm of cybersecurity?
So we have 2 trainings currently out on our LEAP training system around phishing and other social engineering side threats that we face, or just attacks where they're coming in and trying to look like something people are used to. So we have those trainings out there and are moving to have those taken each year by staff as reminders. Our security team right now is currently assessing other options to get out there, but we do also have a program where we send out regular updates through email when threats are active, so such as looking for the latest thing that's hitting to let people know about it and be aware. They're continuing to work with Aaron Rawlings in HR to put out more trainings and get more invested in that.
So are the ones that are populated through LEAP, so that would be at onboarding, so new employees within 30 days are going to be trained, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely through onboarding, but also it's, I believe they've implemented as a requirement to have staff go out and take it regularly.
Yes. Sounds good, thank you.
I'd just like to request a copy of Christine's notes on the health insurance history and cost over the last 16 years.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Before you close general expense, I forgot to hand out the dues sheet for everyone to see. This is, that comes out of general expense, so these are county-wide.
Will they be on Dropbox?
Yes, so anyone who needs paper. Otherwise, it's on Dropbox, yes. And I'm not sure. And I'll speak to one of them here when we talk about deliberation process. There's a note about the LRAPA dues, and I have some more information for you on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, all you internal service people. Thank you. We are now going back to committee business, and Judy would like to address the budget committee on Thursday's process, kind of review and refresh. And
yes, I have a handout here for you. For those who need it in paper, otherwise it's on Dropbox, but we'll be going that way. So I know we have a couple members new to Lane County, but this has been a process that we've used for a good 10 years probably, but the committee is always welcome to change it. This is kind of just going to help us walk through that final night of deliberation, know where to start.
So sorry about that.
Uh-oh.
that's important. She works at CTU.
There you go. My apologies, one and all.
So we start with known issues for discussion, and we do have two that are known, and we have some handouts for you. The first one I just mentioned with the dues sheet is the LRAPA dues. They have requested about a 12.5% increase in their dues. And so what has been built into the proposed budget is, I think it's 2.47%, because that 10% additional that they're requesting is for something else. So we have some information for you. So that's an add request for the budget committee. That is funded out of Public Works, the road fund, just so you're aware. So they would take money out of reserves if that were awarded. It's all Public Works, LRAPA. The other one that we have for you is, can you remind me the name of the project? Dusk to Dawn project through the Human Services Commission. There's been a request for Lane County. I don't have the amount.
30,000 at the bottom.
23. Very last number on the whole page, 23,304. So those two will be the two known issues that you have that would be potential changes to the proposed budget as it's been presented. Then we open it up for the committee to submit any potential revisions that you would like to see to the proposed budget. So what we've done the last probably 5 years is have you email those to us prior to the meeting so that we can put them into the spreadsheet for you so that we know we're starting with those. If you have any questions about where the money would come from, or if you've had conversations with departments, if you have any other information to share on that. So this shows here at the top, sending any known proposals that you would have. If you could send them to Sue Heron, there's the email address there, by end of day Wednesday if possible. Even Thursday morning would be okay. We'll be able to get them in the spreadsheet before Thursday afternoon for you. And then this shows the process for that last night. So we would begin with known issues for discussion. Typically, then the chair will ask if there's enough votes to discuss it. If that's obtained, then there's discussion and it moves forward. Discussion on all the issues that move forward, and then you need at least 6 votes to include it in the approved budget. And so as part of the spreadsheet that we'll provide to you, it will show, as I mentioned, like where the funding would come from, if you'll be changing reserves. We will watch any structural balance issues or anything like that that might come up. And then we'll have some motions for you to approve related to tax rates. The Budget Committee, as you remember, is responsible for setting the tax rates. The board cannot change those once they've been set by the Budget Committee. And as you know, the sheriff again requested the 38 cents going forward, so changing that from the 55 cents allowable. We also addressed the transient room tax being requested for operational use. And that's just how our lane code is written. It really was designed originally for more capital and tourism related things, but we have Lane Event Center and Parks who both need some for operational use. So we detail those amounts for you, and at least 6 votes on those to pass. So open for any questions on that or comments from the chair. Yeah.
Where's the water master?
You finally gave up.
Yeah, we didn't get any community requests this year. Yeah, just so that you're all aware, we do put out an application for the community too. Out on our website, we have a due date for them to submit it, so that information comes to you if we do receive any requests from the community for funding. But we did not receive any this year.
Go ahead, Jim.
So just to be clear, that the tax rate request doesn't really generate exactly from the sheriff's office. It's really this committee that sets the tax rate.
It was requested by the sheriff's office to the budget committee, right? The budget committee sets it.
Yeah, but only a portion of that's going to the sheriff's office, so
correct.
I can't see how he's requesting for these services. So just to be clear, that's, he doesn't have the sole power. My question on tax rates, though, is we had a significant analysis before we made a decision last time about projections of reserves. Have those projections held, or are they still holding for the 38 cents to leave both departments in about the same shape relative to the number of months of reserve at the end of the 5 years?
They are, yes. The departments clarified that for us during their presentation. Yes.
In order to support the same tax rate, we hope that we get that same information.
Yeah, I would second that comment that it would be real good to have presented on Thursday kind of an update of the information we had and the excess reserve due to the money not being all those kinds of issues that got us to 38 cents. Is that still a valid number? I think we should be informed and make an informed decision to stay at 38 cents. Because we do have the authority to go back to 55, correct? So we need to make it.
And we can go down to 0 if we want to. I mean, that's the budget committee sets that rate, just like we, there's a vote every year for us to adopt the $1.28. It seems like, because it almost seems fait accompli that we're going to levy the full $1.28 as our permanent tax rate, but we actually have the ability to, as a budget committee, have that be a lower rate.
Yes.
I don't know why we would at this point with our fiscal problems, but
right.
We do have that ability, and it just solely lies with the budget committee to set that rate.
Yes. Okay. Phil, any questions? Okay. So any other comments, concerns? The process has worked well. Would anybody? Go ahead.
So I'm going to put a request in for I will be in Sun River on Thursday evening, so I'd like to have a request to be able to phone in, and I'll be attending the Western Interstate Region Conference, which is the Western States of NACO, the National Association of Counties. So I'll be representing Lane County there at the conference. So I'd like to request a phone in for the budget committee meeting. Thank you. Okay.
Right.
So you just asked about the process. We have a little bit more formal process that we're hoping you'll help us with a survey to the budget committee this year. So Judy's going to go over that with you.
Yeah, so each year we kind of mix it up a little bit. Whether we go around the table and kind of ask you your feedback about the process these, last 5 meetings, how they've gone. Is the material good? The budget document, the process, the scheduling. So we've put together an online survey with SurveyMonkey. There's 10 questions. So we're hoping, with time, I'm going to email it out so that everybody has a copy. If you really would prefer paper copy, I have a few of those with me. But again, just 10 simple questions so that we can get some feedback from you on, are we meeting your needs? Are you looking for something more? We did hear from you a couple years ago about the paperless idea, and so we've been working on that and trying to move in that direction. So again, any feedback, we'd love to hear it. So I'll send that out this afternoon to an email to all of you with the link to the survey, and then hopefully we'll get it back, I'm asking, by next Friday, June 2nd. So you have a little bit of time, but it'd be greatly appreciated.
How will you give us the results of that survey?
The results are going to be anonymous, but we can certainly share the results, and we're asking for not only just like strongly agree, disagree, but comments where possible. So definitely, I think that the great amount of information will be in the comments too. I'm curious, and I'm happy to share that once we get all the results. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're Thursday at...
So yeah, next meeting, 5:30. There's a dinner.
Dinner beforehand for those.
Commissioner photos at 4:30.
Okay.
Good to do that before dinner.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, you want to write
You want to wait for one?